Early humans have been studied by the archaeologists for a long time. Many fossils, hardened remains of ancient objects like that of plants, feathers, bones, even footprints, have been assisting for their studies to this day. Also, by making important information to geologists, they have made many of ancient evidences to be truly proving the fact of age before. Mainly, there are three ways to define ancient remainings. One dating method is to compare objects that are of similar layers of rock or soil. Just as lower layers are older than these of upper layers, they are able to pinpoint the object's age by comparing with other objects. Radioactive dating is another method to understand objects up to 50,000 years before. Living things keeps decayed radioactive elements inside of them. Hence, by measuring their radiation wave, it is possible to understand when they were formed and alive. Recently, scientists have invented a more precise way of finding objects' age. They use DNA to compare past humans with modern humans. This method astoundingly unveiled how people changed and moved from place to place. Archaeologists must carefully excavate sites where they are searching for artifacts of the ancient people that they may grasp manifold knowledges such as their life patterns, diets, migrations, and so on. Due to the research of scientists, we are now able to identify where and how human ancestors lived. In 1960, British archaeologists Mary and Louis Leakey discovered a piece of human-like skull and named it Homo habilis, which means handyman. The later research uncovered that it was at least 1.75 million years old and that it made and used tools. Ever since this discovery, other archaeologists more frequently found human bones. Lucy was the one of female human bones they have found. Discovered by Johanson and his team, it is thought to have 3.5 foot tall height and lived 3.2 billion years ago. Another had been found from 1992 to 2009 by Tim White and his team in Africa. They defined its period as 4.4 billion years ago and named the complete skeleton of female human Ardi. Like Lucy could walk upright, Ardi did so, but slowly and awkwardly. These discoveries helped evolution theory become more obvious. Humankind began in East Africa about 4.5 million years ago, yet it is still mystery that the human before found later in Chad is claimed to be of 7 million years ago. Scientists must continue to clarify how and where early people appeared and lived. However, there are already little information about this. As far as scientists found, early humans survived by hunting animals or gathering plants by using their own tools like stones in the Old Stone Age, which is Paleolithic era. Over time, technology gradually developed. It included stone weapons made up of bones and antlers, and use of fires. From these developments, people were helped in manifold ways. They could have protected themselves from dangerous animals, cooked meats, light and darkness, and so on. Furthermore, by doing so, people built a community to live together, and it formed them having unique customs. In summary of these passages, which were all about Old Stone Age, people based on evolutionism, they were able to form their lives by developing themselves and live by gradually developing. As the age goes by, new hominin species arose. Two groups of larger brain hominins, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, appeared, yet one of these groups would have survived past the Stone Age. Neanderthals appeared in Germany, Europe, and parts of Asia about 230,000 years ago, and their relatives, Denisovans, have been found in Asia. One of their attributes was burying the dead bodies. Perhaps they may have believed in the life after death. Though some archaeologists disagree because it was much simpler than those of later people. After 30,000 years ago, the last new group appeared. Homo sapiens, meaning wise people, was the first modern human like us. Homo sapiens people share several common points with Neanderthals. They made tools, used fire, hunted animals. They could even communicate with each other by using their own languages. Whereas the difference was that Homo sapiens were taller, lighter, less muscular, and having more complicated communications. Consequently, Homo sapiens were able to develop new skills and teach them to each other. It was the reason that Homo sapiens could only survive in harsh conditions when Neanderthals were being died out. Most archaeologists agree that Homo sapiens walked Earth for only about 200,000 years, but it is not sure yet how people came from and spread. Scientists have developed two main theories about the movements of early humans. By and large, most scientists think that Homo sapiens originated from Africa. From there, Homo sapiens communicated a long migration to other regions of the world. This theory is called out of Africa theory, which means they replaced indigenous groups gradually who had already been living. Some scientists argue that people of this kind have separately developed and mingled together. However, most scientists disagree with this theory. In 2008, genetic study of nearly 1,000 people over the globe was completed. Through this, scientists found that genetic variety communities are closest to Africa. This research boosted the out of Africa theory to be obviously true. Over time, as people migrated all over the world, they must have adopted to new environments and climates. During the 2 billion years, the Earth has experienced 4 long ice ages. Especially in the last Stone Age, glaciers, thick sheets of ice had covered many of the regions upon the Earth, and people had to move as animals migrated in search of their food and living places. Given that people had experienced the 4 long ice ages, they might have struggled to keep themselves warm. Yes, it is. People built warm shelters by fearing animals' skin like that of mammals and kept fires for all the day. Large communities have even included 25 to 50 people. Networks between people or communities also helped organize among themselves. They hunted together and defended from others. To make a strong, safe communities, they also traded their special materials and even information about finding food when they lacked of it. To sum up of past Stone Age, people began to spread out, and Homo sapiens survived in severe conditions by developing better technologies. Past many years, people have also developed to the extent that they formed communities, which eventually led to the appearance of the cradle of civilization.
When did people start to create art? One of the most important signs of a complex culture is the existence of artwork such as paintings and statues. What can we learn from ancient cave paintings? In 1940, 4 French teenagers were exploring a cave near the Ghat of Rascos in southern France. When they saw the walls was covered with paintings of horses, bison, bulls, and other prehistoric animals. Other paintings of the cave showed human figures or abstract designs. Scientists later determined that the Lascaux cave paintings dated back about 16,000 years, to the time of the last ice age. Some images were carved into the stone, but most were painted. The artists made pigment by grinding up minerals of various colors. What does Stone Age art tell us? Early works of art such as these show that Stone Age people were capable of complex thoughts and actions. Perhaps hunter-gatherers believed that creating an image of an animal would give them power over that animal during the hunt. Statues, if pregnant women, may have been intended to bring good luck to women about to give birth. What do we know about Stone Age religion? Sign of more complex culture is the development of religion, religious beliefs, and practice. Many of these practices involve death and burial. How did early people bury their dead? One grave found in present-day Russia contained the bodies of 2 children, a boy about 13 years old and a girl about 8 years old. Both children were covered with thousands of ivory beads. What were some early religious practices? animism to early humans. There were spirits in the animals they hunted. There were also spirits in the trees, rocks, water, and weather around them. When did people start to farm? Beginning as much as 18,000 years ago, humans gradually began to learn a new skill that over time changed how they would live. By around 10,000 to 9,000 years ago, some communities were relying on farming for food. This development marked the end of the Paleolithic era and the beginning of what we call the Neolithic era or New Stone Age. How did people first modify the environment? Others learned to modify or change their environment so that it would provide more food. This discovery led them to find ways to encourage the growth of wild food plants. How did domesticated plants and animals change people's lives? People learned to domesticate plants and animals, especially those that they used for food. To domesticate means to change the growth of plants, of behavior of animals in ways that are useful for humans. A revolution is a complete change in ways of thinking, working, or living. It became a reliable source of food. Grains such as wheat, rice, or maize became chief food sources for entire societies. Domesticated animals such as horses, sheep, and cattle were easier to control. Nomads are people who move from place to place with their herds. What new tools did people make? Farmers invented new tools. They used axes to cut down trees for farmland and sickles to harvest grain. Later, people mined for bronze and iron and learned how to smelt or use heat to remove metals from the mineral. They used these metals to create more efficient tools.
For new ways of life. Where did farming begin and how did it spread? No one knows for sure, but archaeologists have found evidence to suggest where farming began and how did it spread. The first centers of agriculture. It is believed that 10,000 years ago, southwestern Asia became the first center of agriculture. Scientists found unearthed seeds, domesticated wheat plants that were buried long ago. Spreading. Farming may have spread from southwestern Asia, westward into Africa, northward into Europe, eastward into the Indus River Valley of South Asia. Places where agriculture appeared independently. In the southern part of China, farming began with the domestication of rice. In the northern part, a grain called millet was the first crop to be domesticated. In Central and South America, people learned to grow potatoes, beans, and squash. In Africa, farming began with crops such as sorghums and yams. Cost of farming. Planting crops and herding or bringing together animals took a great deal of time and energy. Farming was uncertain. If a year's crop failed due to bad weather or disease, the family might starve. Farming could be dangerous. Evidence suggests that bands of nomads sometimes attacked farmers and stole their food. Benefits of farming. Farming produced more food and required less land than hunting and gathering. As a result of agriculture, more people were able to build permanent homes and farming villages. Farming provided new source of materials of clothing. How did farming change human culture? The first effect on farming was on people's food supply. Over time, the Neolithic agricultural revolution transformed every part of human culture. What new kinds of shelter did people build? Farmers found ways to build permanent shelters. First, people used a mixture of mud and straw to form walls. Second, the sun baked and hardened the mixture. They made roofs by placing poles and branches across the top of the walls and covering them with mud. Catalhuyuk. It is the oldest known farming settlement in the world. Facts about Catalhuyuk. The houses of Catalhuyuk were so tightly packed together that there were few or no streets. People buried their dead beneath the floors. The interiors were rich with artwork, mural paintings, reliefs, and sculptures. Each home had its own kitchen and food storage area. The people grew grains and raised flocks of sheep and goats. How did farming change clothing? For hunter-gatherers, the most important material for clothing were animal hides and furs. Farming provided new materials that were lighter and easier to work with. From Egypt to India to the Americas, farmers domesticated cotton plant. They learned to weave clothes from the plant fibers. Another plant, flax, became a source of linen. Domesticated animals such as sheep and yaks also provided clothing materials. People used wool and another animal hair to form yarn or thread. In China, people later how to braid silkworm. What were the effects of food surpluses? As crops and herds improved, the amount of food the farmers could produce each year increased. Surplus of food could support growing population, the size of farming villages. As there were surplus of food, not everyone in a village needed to farm. Some people could specialize. Skilled tool makers turned stone into polishes, axes, and knives. Potters shaped clay into bowls. Weavers wove sheep into wool into cloth. A few people also became skilled at metalworking. Metal workers needed ore to extract or remove, such metal as copper and tin. How did farming change social organization? Having a permanent place to live meant that people could own more possessions. Over time, some families accumulated more food and possession than others. As surpluses increased and people began to specialize, greater social difference emerged. How did the first cities begin? The world's first cities began as farming villages in the Middle East. The city of Uruk. Difference between Uruk and Catalhuyuk from other farming villages is size. In size, Catalhuyuk covered about 32 acres and was home to no more than 6,000 people. In Uruk, more than 40,000 people lived there, and Uruk covered an area nearly 1,000 acres and had houses, gardens, and large public buildings such as temples. In government, villages such as Catalhuyuk had little need for complex government, but Uruk was too large to manage that way. Uruk had a strong, well-organized government. How did cities become centers of wealth? As cities such as Uruk also had a more complex economy than did early farming villages. Uruk's more complex economy was based on both farming and trade. Workshops that produced all kinds of goods lined the city streets. Traders from Uruk traveled widely. The wealth of Uruk and other early cities attracted many newcomers. Lesson 5. The rise of new civilizations. How did cities lead to civilizations? As early cities grew in size and power, some of them became centers of civilizations. What resources were important? The most important resources was fertile soil, fresh water, and seeds. However, these resources were worth little if people could not provide the labor and tools needed to produce enough food. Managing these resources will require a level of planning and organization that marked a new stage in human society. Where were early civilizations? Like the early villages, the earliest civilization also appeared in southwestern Asia, in the city-state of Sumer. Four of the early civilizations developed in the fertile valleys surrounding major rivers. The Nile in the northwest Africa, the Tigris and Euphrates in the southwest Asia of Mesopotamia, and Indus in South Asia, the Huang in China. River valleys provided a good setting for permanent settlements. Each year the river rose and flooded the nearby land. When the flood water went down, a fresh layer of fertile soil remained that farmer could use to grow crops. There were early civilizations that didn't begin in river valleys. Greek civilization emerged on a rocky peninsula in southeastern Europe and a series of islands in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Civilizations in the Americas cut down trees and burned them to create farmland. What are the features of civilizations? Most early civilizations shared 8 basic features: cities, organized governments, established region, job specialization, social classes, public works, arts and architecture, and system of writing. Early cities emerged near farming centers. As food surpluses led to rapid population growth, villages grew into cities and cities grew into civilizations. They served as center of religion, government, and culture. Organized government. One rule of government is managing society's resources so that people get those things they need to survive. A strong government can also form and train an army to defend a society from attack or to expand its borders. As population grew, government became more difficult. Powerful rulers called warlords took control of tribes in larger areas and formed governments, headed by kings or queens. And they relied on a large number of public officials to handle different duties. Established religion. Everyone generally followed the same beliefs and practices. Rulers of early civilization usually claimed that their right to rule came from the gods. For example, in China, emperors were called sons of heaven. In most early civilizations, people believed in many gods and goddesses that controlled most events in their life. Job specialization. Early farmers produced enough food to support many kinds of specialized workers. Skilled craft workers specialized in producing goods. Traders and merchants specialized in buying and selling goods. Job specialization allowed people to develop the main skills and talents needed to create and maintain a civilization. Social classes. Social classes are groups of people that occupy different ranks or levels in society. The highest social class in most early societies was made up of priests and rulers. The people at this rank had most power and wealth. The social classes in the middle include farmers, merchants, and skilled workers. Members of this class varied in wealth and status from one society to another. In many societies, slaves made up the lowest class. Slaves were often prisoner captures in war or poor people who sold themselves to pay their debts. Public works. Government organized workers to build large-scale projects such as roads, water system, and city walls. Building these public works was costly, time-consuming, and often dangerous. Often, workers were injured or killed. Still, public works benefit the society as a whole. Art and architecture. Architecture was closely related to public works. Early people built and decorated magnificent temples, tombs, and palaces. And many of these buildings served a public function, but they were also objects of beauty. Skilled craft workers produced fine luxury items for the upper classes, such as gold jewelry and perfume boxes. Music and literature too enriched the lives of early people and became a mark of advanced civilization. System of writing. First, in early societies, it was developed mainly to record numbers such as amount of grain harvested. Eventually, however, they recorded all kinds of information like law, wrote down prayers to the gods, and described the mighty deeds of rulers.